So we are really looking at you lifting the game and do something that not only we are proud of, but you should be proud of your work as well. Okay, so, and you know that the due date is this Friday, so I hope you're all working diligently. And okay, so make sure you get it in on time and don't miss the deadline. See, I just did a test. Half of the class didn't even have a clue. See, half of the class didn't have a clue. Yeah, you guys don't read the announcement. Every week, you know, Sunday night, I start thinking, oh gosh, I have to make an announcement to the class, my weekly, like Donald Trump, every week has, you know, to stir up something. But you guys have to read to keep up with the message, with the news, and what we are doing. These messages have subtle, you know, messages there embedded that if you pick those up, you will find out it will help you a lot. But you need to know how to read my mind and, hey, this is what he's saying. There's something, a hidden message there. Okay? Good. So that's one. The second one is, it relates to what we do a little bit. I know last time I came, I did all this messy stuff and all that, and I put a few things on the system for you to read, all these graphs and all that, okay? Don't get too stressed over it. What I want you to take from it is the language and the structured thinking. What leads to what? If there's a change in this, the government imposes a tariff or a tax or a subsidy or an export restraint, what happened? What are the chain reactions? That's what I want you to take. I don't want you necessarily to be able to reproduce these graphs that I did there without understanding what you're doing. If you understand what you're doing, that's great, okay? If you reproduce those graphs and says, that's great. But that wasn't the objective. The objective was for you to get you to think in a structured way. I will ask a simple question now, okay? What happens if, you know, the election's coming? So the government is splashing a lot of money around, okay? So what happens tomorrow if the government comes, says, hey, we will give a big subsidy to all wheat producers? What will happen? What's the next thing? What are the implications of that announcement? We will give a subsidy to wheat producers in Australia. We understand wheat producers are having it tough. There's a drought and all these things happening. We'll give a subsidy. And the subsidy will be $100 per ton of wheat, just as to. So somebody asks you, you're taking the tram, you're coming to uni, he says, hey, I heard you're taking international business, hey. So what are the implications of this subsidy? What will happen?
Supply of that product will increase as the people who are producing it will be producing more and more so that they can earn more and they can get the more subsidy.
Okay, supply. I have to repeat this because the people who are recording this, the people who are listening to it later will write to me, says, I couldn't hear the question, so that's why I repeat it, okay? He says supply would increase. How many agree with that? You have no friends here. How many? Was that, you agree, or was that just doing the hair? Just doing the hair. Yeah, okay. So no one agrees with you. I'm a bit surprised. I'm very surprised. Yes, supply will increase because farmers are rational people like we all are. And we say, hey, you know what? There's more money in wheat. So in my farm, half of the farm I grow wheat and the other half I grow corn. But now the wheat is getting a little bit more profitable, isn't it? So what do? Yeah, kill the corn, put wheat. Okay, so supply will increase. So we all agree with that? I think they all agree, but this is yeah. So, but here's a more pertinent question. In that framework that I did last week, when we say supply will increase, how do you show that in that framework? How do you show supply is increasing?
By producing a equilibrium diagram first, and then first showing that what was the actual equilibrium point, and then increasing the supply, moving the supply curve.
Yeah, he's using my tactic now. He's embedding those messages there. You have to read through it to get to know what he's saying. Who wants to simplify it? He says you produce this equilibrium curve and then da. Who wants to simplify? How can you demonstrate an increase in supply? I'm looking for a very specific answer that will kind of say, got you to go, oh, I see, yeah, I never thought about that, but now I get it.
Reducing price?
No. I will make a comment. You're going the wrong way. Too vague. Supply will increase in quantity, too vague. A shift of the supply curve. But I knew she would get the answer because last time she kind of tried to impress me. She said, I've done economics. I know all these things. Yeah, elasticity and all these things. Okay, so it's a shift, isn't it? So what we're talking about here, basically, you have, this is Australian wheat. Australian wheat, this is the price, this is demand, this is supply. What we're talking about, a subsidy will just shift this here as subsidy, S1, it shifts by the amount of the subsidy. What it means is that at any price, you take any price at all, on the old supply curve, you will produce 100 tons of wheat. Now, with the subsidy, you're producing 130 tons of wheat. And then you can draw the implication for your trade. This is your export curve. This is your import curve. So when this shifts, your export curve also shifts because you get this new equilibrium here, you get this here, and then you can look at the international business implications. I just want to leave this with you. That's what I want you to start thinking about. Okay, a subsidy will shift that supply curve. Does it affect, the chain of events doesn't involve the price. The government is not changing the price, okay? It shifts that supply curve. Is that okay? Is that okay? You're taking lots of notes. I have a reading on that. So if you look at what I've put there, it explains it a little bit, okay? So a subsidy can take many forms. If the government tomorrow comes and says something like, hey, you know all these farmers, now we will send you some students to work for free for you during summer as part of their work integrated learning. That could be a subsidy because farmers getting free labor, so that's a subsidy. So you have to start thinking outside of the box. How does this policy translate into affecting the supply, the export, and all these things? Okay. A subsidy can come on, rather than giving a direct payment to farmers, subsidy can come in terms of, hey, we are going to subsidize the price of fertilizers. Farmers say, hey, fertilizer is cheaper now. Let's put more fertilizer in it. Okay, so, and that's the same thing. It's not just farming. It's the same thing for electronic companies. It's the same thing for any industry. So as you can see, it's good that you start thinking about shifts in those curves and how that establishes new equilibrium. That new equilibrium generates new export behavior. This is the behavior of farmers. This is the behavior of consumers. This is the behavior of exporters, behavior of importers. All these are behaviors, how they react to these changes, to these, some people call them shocks, but I'm not that dramatic, okay? So they are changes in policy. Okay, so it's that structured way of thinking that I want you to subscribe to when you are, so you have to, when somebody asks you a question, as in a question on the exam or on the tram, you have to step back a little bit, think, okay, how will this work? And explain yourself, okay? Is that fair enough? Yeah, that's good. Any question at all on what we are doing? Before I get started, I want to leave you with something else. Right now we're going from this point to this point here, A to Z, okay? There are different ways we can get from here to here. We can go from A, direct route to Z, but when we're talking about knowledge, when we're talking about topics that there are no clear answers, when we're talking about issues where the right answer is debatable, not necessarily right or wrong, so the path can be B here, C here, D here, E here, before you actually go to Z. So when you see me coming here in the morning, I just want to connect a few dots, okay? Connect a few dots, leave you with some of the big pictures, connect a few dots. So we are really going from A to Z, but I come here to give you a little bit of B. I tell you this is B, this is where I come in, so you can connect the dot between A and B, okay? And Ruby will, after I leave, Ruby will come, will connect the dot between B and C, okay? But it's up to you to go and read the chapters, do some of the readings to actually connect all the other dots to get to Z. You have the best way you can connect all these dots is to read the chapters, okay? And if, remember first time I came here, I said you have to be proactive learners. I haven't seen that yet. Because what I really expect, you guys will come to me and says, hey, Doran, I was in the lecture, you mentioned something, Ruby mentioned something and confused us completely. And then I read the stuff you put on. Is there something else I can read to get my head around this? That's what proactive learning is, to get to that end point Z. But if you read your chapter, all this will start making sense nicely. Okay? So I hope it's, you're not too happy with that. I say, you're going, well, he wants us to read now. Okay. Does that make sense? So that's when I come here, that's what I do. I'll just give you one of the nodes to connect it. Ruby will give you two other nodes, go a little bit in more detail. But the important thing is that you have to connect it because there are no right or wrong answer. You can disagree with what we're saying as long as you explain why. If you're on the tram, you don't have to agree with the person next to you. You say, yeah, this is what is going to happen if you put a subsidy. As long as you draw from your theory, you cannot be wrong. But the person doesn't have to agree with you. The person can say, oh, no, mate, you don't know what you're talking about. Quit this Deakin program. They're not teaching you the right stuff. Okay? You say, okay. So you tell me what you know then. Okay? Talking about the Deakin program, today I got dressed not because I'm coming here. I know it's disappointing to you guys. But I got dressed because I'm on a panel for the AQUIS accreditation. So the AQUIS, this is our accreditation. You know how we are accredited with WCSB. Now we're trying to get AQUIS accreditation, and today the team of accreditors come here for a whole week, talk to staff, students, and I'm on that panel. So, but the news for you is that if we get, right now we are WCSB accredited, this program is. We are in the top 2% of the world programs. With EQUIS, that brings us in the top 1% of the programs in the world. Okay? And I think we will get EQUIS accreditation. Okay? So that's happening today. So the disappointing news for you is that I didn't get dressed for you guys, but the good news is that I am contributing towards EQUIS. So your value, your worth, your value when you walk on the street, the Melbourne University is EQUIS accredited. There are two major accreditation of business schools. One is WCSB, is American-based. The other one is EQUIS, is European-based. Okay? Those are the only two in the world. There's another one called EMBA for MBA. But EMBA is kind of losing its shine a little bit with EQUIS and WCSB. Okay, so you have two major accreditation and very important. Okay, that's your badge. Okay, increasingly in academia, if I'm looking for a job, which I'm not, don't get scared, I'm not looking for a job. But if I'm looking for a job, very first thing they will say, did you graduate from an EQUIS accredited school? Increasingly, that's what happens. Okay, or WCSB of course, but now it's increasing in WCSB and EQUIS accredited. Okay, so the EQUIS, the WCSB is a crown, the EQUIS and EMBA, that's what you call the triple crown accreditation. Okay, so today we go for the second one. All right, so today we're going to talk about, Ruby, what are we talking about? International monetary something. System, yeah. International monetary system. So, who can tell me what this is? $10 bill. $10. Money. Australian money. Currency. Aussie dollar. Cash. Money. Cash.
This is banknote.
Banknote. Cash. Cash. I'm very disappointed. That's a piece of paper. Plastic. Okay. Plastic, even worse than paper. At least paper is biodegradable and environmentally friendly. This is plastic. Okay? Isn't it? Why do we like it so much? Has value. Why do we like this so much? You can buy stuff. Yeah, now he's talking. We can buy stuff. We can trade it. Australian dollar, you can trade this? Who takes it? Oh, she also had it. Okay. But if I was holding some Zimbabwean dollars here, and I asked that question, I say, who will take this? Last time I watched a video, somebody, it's on the internet, somebody taking a wheelbarrow full of money and then go in Zimbabwe. They went to the to a shop. What do you call that? A shopping mall with a wheelbarrow. They went in there and buy one loaf of bread, and then left all the money there. And then I went, oh my God, like this is what a waste of money, isn't it? A whole wheelbarrow, and then they said something like that loaf of bread cost something like 2 billion Zimbabwean dollars or some crazy amount. So I thought that was bad enough. And I don't know if they made that video just to get people attention or the dramatic effect. And then they show the guy is taking his bread, is walking home. Down the road, they have a big 4 or 5 people around a fire. They are warming, keeping their hands warm. And what are they burning? Money. So here you go, the value of money, okay? So this is money. So today's lecture, I'd like to start this a little bit the other way. I know you have chapters 10 and 11, isn't it? I think I'd like to start giving you a few hints about what you need to latch on to when you read those chapters. There are plenty of things. You need to read everything, but what do you really need to latch on to? I would like you to kind of read chapter 11 first. In order to understand the international monetary system, okay, and foreign exchange, you really need to know a little bit of history, the history of money. Where does money come from? Okay, where does it come from? Why do we value it so much? And then you will understand. Can you bring the questions? Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. So you really need to understand what is money, where does it come from, why do we value it so much, and once you get that historical perspective and some of the details of that, then it will be easier for you to say, okay, so how do we determine the value of this money? Okay, about maybe 10 years ago, no, not 10 years, 2004, maybe 2019. I can't remember when, but the Australian dollar, well, not long ago, it was actually worth more than the US dollar. I remember I was traveling and I exchanged my money. I said, wow, for $1 Australian dollar, I'm getting like 103 US dollars. But now, for $1 Australian dollar, you get only 71 cents US. So you can see how things change. So we have to understand what determines the value of our currency. Okay? But if you go back in history a little bit, you see throughout history, when we were still living in caves, okay, we were very unsophisticated, we were still exchanging things with each other. Okay? We're still exchanging things. So somebody lived in that cave there, and they were fishing, so they had access to lots of fish, and somebody else lived in another cave somewhere else, and they were growing some vegetable. They had vegetables, so they exchanged fish for vegetable. And very quickly they found out that it's not always, they don't want all this fish all the time, all this vegetable, always give some fish, get some vegetable. So they came up with the idea of having a medium of exchange where you can kind of buy the fish at a certain rate, and then the money you get, you don't want vegetable, you can go somewhere else there, get something else. Okay, so money makes it easy. Barter system is very limited because you end up with a lot of the stuff that you don't really want. But money, you can choose what you want to acquire, what you want to buy. Okay? So if you go back in history, we've used various things as a medium of exchange. But those things, some of them had intrinsic value, like gold. We've used gold, silver as medium of exchange. Okay? Even today, people go diving looking for ships that have been wrecked for 200-300 years from the Spanish era to look for those Spanish silver coins because they have intrinsic value. Okay? Those silver is worth a lot of money, a lot of value. So some of them had intrinsic value, but others didn't have intrinsic value and were used as a medium of exchange. For example, pieces of paper, cigarettes. People use those to exchange in order to barter. But they didn't have the qualities that we expect of money. And one of those qualities is store of wealth, store of value. I put this in my pocket, I store it. I know if I need it in a month, I will probably find out that its purchasing power is more or less the same. Okay? But if you have a cigarette or a banana that you're using as money, you store it in a cupboard, you come in a month or in a year, you find out your banana is disintegrated. Okay? Or if you're using fish, you cannot store that for more than a day. So money has certain qualities. Okay, a medium of exchange. It is widely accepted. Okay, it is legal tender. If you look at this, I don't know if it says legal tender, but see, I've never looked at this because I tap all the time. Okay, but the US dollar says it's legal tender. Okay, legal tender means the government through the Reserve Bank has the monopoly power to issue money, to print money, to control the money. It's legal. It's legally binding, accepted. Okay? So money has certain qualities, and those qualities are reflected largely in what we have today. So all the history behind, from the times we were in caves, the times when we are using different things as a medium of exchange, they have kind of gone. Now we use this here in our modern society. And this system that we use goes back to kind of maybe 100 years ago. It goes back further, but 100 years ago we started to regulate this system. Before we had a system called the Bretton Woods system following the Second World War. We put in place the Bretton Woods Agreement. That was, it's called Bretton Woods because there's a place in UK called Bretton Woods. All the countries sat there and negotiated and agreed, so they call it the Bretton Woods Agreement. Same thing with the Paris Accord when it comes to climate change. The reason why it's called Paris Accord, it's not because Paris is such a good city for climate or anything like that. No, all the ministers, all the different countries met in that place and they hammered out. Okay, same thing, they call the Doha Agreement on trade. Why is it called Doha Agreement? Not because Doha is the greatest trading nation on the world, but because they all met there. Okay, so you get the point. So the Bretton Woods Agreement started, they said at that time, following the Second World War, the idea was we need to have a fixed exchange rate system. So for every dollar, prior to that we had the gold standard, but that system was kind of flawed. So the Bretton Woods Agreement, all the countries in more recent history agreed that we need a fixed exchange rate system, but that fixed exchange rate system didn't work well. It collapsed because during the Bretton Woods Agreement, all currencies were pegged to the US dollars. Okay? They were pegged to the US dollars. It means that the value of Australian dollar was relative to US dollars. The value of the British pound sterling was relative to US dollar, was pegged. When the US dollar was changing a little bit, those currencies also changed. But that system broke down at a time when inflation was very high in the US. And countries started to say, hey, you're having problems internally with your inflation. Why is our currency kind of suffering here? Go and sort out your inflation yourself because our economy is moving just fine. But all of a sudden, because you have such bad economic management in your country, in US, you're affecting the rest of the world. So the Bretton Woods Agreement collapsed. And Ruby will talk to you about the mechanics of how the value of a currency is influenced by inflation rate. Okay? Relative inflation is very important. So when the Bretton Woods Agreement collapsed, then after the war, the world community got together. They says, hey, we need some institutions to take care of the global monetary system. Some countries are very rich, others are very poor. Wealth is being transferred from some countries to another. Small countries are not doing too well. So we need a global agreement, global institutions to monitor how the global monetary system works and to keep it stable. So the global community through the United Nations came up with the International Monetary Fund. You hear about International Monetary Fund all the time. Its reputation is not that great these days because the International Monetary Fund was very, very useful during the time when this paper was the only type of money, only form of money. And when trade was very small, when methods of payment were restricted to this type of money. But over time, the international monetary system, and this is my view, is having trouble adjusting to technology and to new ways of making payments. Okay? So the International Monetary Fund is not that effective in regulating the international monetary system, meaning the international system of payments, the system which underlines how we make payments to each other in the world, and the rate at which we exchange our currencies. The World Bank also played a role. At the same time the World Bank was put in place, the global community decided there were going to be two institutions. One is the International Monetary Fund to take care of the monetary system. The other one is the World Bank. The main function of the World Bank is actually to look after developing countries, okay, to ensure that every country is progressing in terms of the development. And in order to do that, you need money. A lot of money exchanges hand. So the International Monetary Fund and World Bank works hand in hand together. International Monetary Fund used to go to developing countries. Oh, part of the history I forgot to mention there. There is also an agreement. Who is the chief of the International Monetary Fund? Who is the big? She's always talking on TV everywhere. Anybody knows? Who is from Europe here? No? No? No idea? Who is the chief of the World Bank? Anybody knows? No? Okay, I will tell you, I don't know either. But what I do know is that the chief of the IMF is a European. Okay? And the chief of the World Bank is an American. And the reason why I know that is because this is one of the agreements that all countries had to sign on, is that these are the two institutions, two pillars of the world economy. And the Americans and the Europeans came to an agreement that you take the presidency of the IMF and America will look after the World Bank. That has always been the case. Right now, Christine Lagarde, French, she was supposed to become a French president at some point in time, but that's how politics work. They gave her this big job in the IMF, so just take her out of the country, put her, look after IMF. Now she's not going to be French president, but she is the big boss of the IMF, okay? And the big boss of the World Bank is an American, okay? So that's, you can see how flawed those institutions are. We have 159 countries, okay? But there's an agreement somewhere we have to abide to. Historically, since 1949, these presidencies have been changed, always European, okay, for IMF, always American for World Bank, because these are very powerful institutions. These are institutions which determine the rate at which you exchange your money. And if you don't have the right person influencing that decision, you know, the US dollar might, the European currency might go a little bit crazy. So they want to make sure they have their people there. So those institutions are somewhat flawed. Just as an aside, China is not happy with that, as many other countries are, obviously won't be happy with that. So China is saying we will start our own equivalent of the World Bank. So what did China start a couple of years ago? What is it called? China started its own version of the World Bank. What is it called? Which one? No? 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 I think you guys have to read it a little bit. Okay? Very important development. China is challenging the World Bank. He says, I know there is this agreement there that of the 160 countries, nobody can vote, just you two guys decide who takes the presidency, but so that's okay, you can do whatever you want. Now we will start our own version of the World Bank. Quickly, all the countries in the world rush there to join them, so China has a big equivalent of the World Bank for the last 2 years. Okay, so we started with this fixed exchange rate system. That system collapsed because inflation in the US started to ramp up. Countries feel affected. And so what happened after that? Fixed exchange rate collapsed in 1973. That's more recent. You can kind of relate to that. Since 1973, the world has operated a floating exchange rate system. And that's your chapter 10. Exchange rates have become more volatile since then because the value of your currency changes almost every second. You go on the net, you look at the value of the currency, you want to buy some currency, it will tell you, well, we will lock this in for you for the next 5 minutes, otherwise you will have to refresh and rebuy because those currency foreign exchange markets operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and never stops, okay? So that's the kind of big picture, and there are details in your book, but these are the highlights that I hope you can take with you. Most countries, except for a very few countries, operate a free floating exchange rate, meaning that the value of the currency is out there, and the market decides the value of the currency based on the demand and the supply for the currency, okay? Based on the demand and supply of the currency, the market determines the value of the currency. Okay? China and a few other countries continue to this day to operate a kind of a managed float. The government keeps a very close eye on the currency, and many countries do it, not just China, but because China has such a big influence on world trade and world payments and world investment. Okay? So its government keeps a close eye on the value of the currency. The government can intervene in that market through something called open market operations. You will read this. The government intervene into the market when they see the value of the currency is going down. What it means. Let's say you work for a big company to advise the Chinese government. And the Chinese government tells you, you're the consulting firm, okay? You're paid $1 million a day just to advise the Chinese government. It's good money, isn't it? Yeah. But you have to give good advice. If you don't give good advice, that contract is gone, right? So you see the value of the currency, Chinese yuan is going down. And Chinese government says, hey, you know, we have open market operations at our disposal. So what do you do in order to get the value of the currency up a little bit? What do you do? So again, as I said, I will leave this with you. So you have the demand for yuan, the supply of yuan. This is the exchange rate. Okay? And all of a sudden, the value of the Chinese currency is going down. Why would the value of the Chinese currency go down? There's no demand. People don't want it. Out there, lots of people say, oh, so when the demand goes down, what happens? Demand goes from this point here, okay, to this point here. Let's say, so value of the currency goes down. Exchange. You will see when Ruby does this, it will tell you the different ways to look at the currency from the value of the Chinese yuan or from the value of the US dollar. So there are different ways. So the point here is that the Chinese government goes in with open market operations. They buy more Chinese dollars, or they can remove Chinese dollars from the circulation. So you can put more dollars into circulation, or you can remove, we're talking about yuan here, yuan from the circulation to affect the price. So the price of a currency, the exchange rate, is related to the demand and the supply of those currencies. That's the bottom line. And through open market operations, most countries, especially kind of the countries where you have a little bit of government involvement in like centrally planned economies, Russia, okay, they get involved in open market operations more often. But in countries that have a free market economy like Australia, we don't get involved into open market operations too much. And you will also learn through your chapter what are the implications of that, okay? Maybe you are getting involved into something as a country. Maybe this is a signal that you should take into consideration. Rather than propping up the value of the currency, you let the market do its job. So that's the philosophy in Australia. Let the market do its job. But in China, very quickly, because it's centrally planned, the government intervenes in the market through open market operations, either take a load of currency out because there's too much Chinese yuan on the market, so its price is going down, or put some more yuan in the market in order to control its price. Okay? Now, why all of a sudden, the next thing you have to know, why all of a sudden there's too much yuan in the market or too little yuan in the market? Why all of a sudden there's too much US dollars in the market or too little US dollars in the market? Because I told you, this is a piece of paper. Okay? So why? We're talking about demand and supply for currencies. Why? What is beneath the demand and the supply for those currencies? Trade. So we don't want this money because it is a piece of plastic. Why do we want it? Because we can use it to acquire the things that we want. Okay? So the demand and the supply for currencies are related or driven by the demand and the supply for goods and services. I can give you a whole bag of this money here. I put it on the table here. And if you see no value in it, you don't want to buy anything, it's useless. It's only useful when you want to acquire something. So the demand for currencies, remember, gold had intrinsic value. The gold itself is worth a lot. You can make jewelry, you can make stuff that goes into cell phone. Gold is a very valuable metal because of its use, versatile use. Okay? Versatile use. If you take another metal like iron, steel has no versatile use, with limited use, so value is lower. But gold has very versatile use, and it's rare. Okay? Silicon also has good use, all your cell phone and all that. But silicon is everywhere. You just walk on the beach, there's silicon everywhere. But gold is rare. So the fact that gold is very rare and it has such versatile use makes it scarce. Okay? So it has intrinsic value. But this has no intrinsic value. It's a piece of plastic. The government can print so much tomorrow. If they want to go on the market and take a load of money out because there's too much of it, so they start burning it, so they burn it. One of my friends worked in the central bank. His job was to supervise the burning of this money. At first I thought, what a great job. You know, you go there and they say, go burn this money. And you just stuck some in the pocket and walk out. No. It's a very serious job, okay? So you can do that. So his job was to burn this money. So several people kind of supervise that. The camera, there's an incinerator, you burn money. They burn all money. You know, they don't burn money for the sake of burning money. They take money from this has like a 10-year life, maybe more now with plastic, but paper has 10-year life, so you burn. Anyway, So the point was that you have demand for money is driven by the demand for goods and services. All of a sudden, if we have a bumper crop in Australia, all these China and Indonesia and India and all these big countries will come to buy wheat from us. We have a bumper crop. Or come to buy wheat. And how do they pay us? They pay us in Australian dollars. How do they get the Australian dollars? Yeah, they go to their bank, they open a letter of credit, they say we're importing 1,000 tons of wheat from Australia. So the value of that 1,000 tons of wheat is so many US dollars, because wheat is traded in US dollars. So it's so many US dollars. So Indonesia, in Indonesian bank, they have a deposit, they have a safety box where they keep some US dollars. They take the US dollars to the bank, and then they go on the international foreign exchange market. They say, now we want to exchange some US dollars to get enough Australian dollars to buy this wheat, because the wheat farmer in Victoria doesn't accept Indonesian currency. They don't accept US dollars. They only accept Australian dollars. So they go to the bank. What the bank does, go on the computer quickly, we want to buy so many Australian dollars. All of a sudden, what happens to demand for Australian dollars? Demand for Australian dollars go up. When the demand for Australian dollars go up, what happens? Price of Australian dollars goes up. Okay? So at the time, when I mentioned that Australian dollars was worth more than the American dollar, what do you think led to that? I think it was about 2014. Australian dollars was worth more than US dollars. What do you think led to that? Demand for Australian dollars was more. Everybody out there wanted Australian dollars. Why do you think everybody out there wanted Australian dollars? Trade was good. I want a bit more than that. I want a little bit more detail. Why? At that time, I know history is kind of difficult if you're not part of it. But at that time, China was booming. China was absolutely booming. There's a lot of construction in China. Buildings, roads, bridges, schools, hospitals, universities, all kinds of construction projects. So China was importing a lot of iron to make steel from Australia. Australia and Brazil are the world's two largest exporters of iron ore. So China was buying a lot of iron ore from Australia. So if you go to the statistics, you will see amazing amount of iron ore. China was importing iron ore from Australia. Okay? In order to pay for this iron ore, we are pushing up the price of Australian dollars. So our exchange rate went up and up and up. What could the government have done in order to control the value of that currency? Rather than letting the currency climb up and up and up, if the government wanted to control that, what could the government have done? Say again?
Supply would have been restricted by the government?
No. The Chinese are buying all this iron ore, and they want more Australian dollars in order to pay all these companies in Australia for their iron ore. And the government is sitting there saying, oh my God, look at this here, the price of Australian dollar going up. And so that's creating inflation, doesn't it? Maybe restrictions on trade, yeah, that's good. Although I don't agree with that policy, but yeah, you are explaining, you have a good point, so I'll accept that.
What are the restrictions was it? Maybe that China can only buy a particular amount of
Okay, export restraint. Okay, now you all of you guys are going like sheep into a direction. She says trade restriction is a quota. Okay, let's think of something else. What else could the government have done? They could have restricted trade. I accept that. What else?
Can they print more money?
Print more money. There's a shortage of money in the system. shortage of Australian dollars, and the Chinese say, we want more of this. So the government could have, if they wanted to, just print more money to keep that dollar at a reasonable level. Okay, that's one way of doing that. In other words, what we are saying, the government could have shifted that supply of the Australian dollar. Just adjust that a little bit. That's what open market operations does. Okay, you intervene in the market, you put more local currency in the market, or you remove some of the local currency from the market. Open market operations, very powerful. Okay, what's wrong with an Australian dollar going up and up and up all the time?
There will be a point, like we have studied economics, there is a point if anything that goes up at a certain point of time, then it will be going down. So it will be first booming and then it will be going down.
Yeah, that's a layman explanation. Everything that goes up comes down. No, I want more than that. Yeah, that's layman's. You know, everything that goes up comes down. I want something more concrete. What was my question? I forgot my question. what was my question? Yeah, what's wrong with it? Yeah, what's wrong with that?
It might affect the export price. Trade will affect the price of their exports. So people will not buy more.
Okay, so it makes our exports, I mean the Chinese want all this iron ore, but iron ore is not the only thing we export. We're exporting lots of things. So at that time, for example, our services, education is a service. We export a lot of education, $15 billion of education in export revenue. So if you look at the statistics during the same time, there are a lot of complaints from international students and international partners that Australia was too expensive, we cannot send you more students. Okay? Too expensive. Services, export. Tourism is an export for us. Tourist says, hey, Australia is too expensive, look at this. Okay? So that's when our currency gets expensive. Tourists find it expensive to come and spend money here. International students find it expensive to come and study here. And other exporters find it expensive as well because the importer from Japan who is importing fresh vegetable from Australia find it very expensive because the currency is going up and up. Okay, so you have to start thinking in those terms that, okay, there's some advantages of having a strong currency. There is a school of thought which says that countries that have strong currencies are very strong countries in economically and in terms of the economic development, in terms of the quality of the welfare system and all that. Okay? And countries who have very poor currencies are countries that are heading towards a wastebasket. So the reality is somewhere in between. Your currency have to find its own value, and the currency, the exchange rate, it sends a signal. That's a signal as to how your economy is doing from a global perspective. That's a signal. Do foreigners want your currency? And by that, what it means is that do foreigners value what we are manufacturing here? And that includes service as well. Okay? Do foreigners, if they don't value it, it's like you have a huge set of consumers for your company. You have domestic consumers and international consumers. If your currency is getting weaker, it means your international consumers don't value what you're producing. There's no demand for your goods, therefore no demand for your goods, no demand for your currency. Okay? Now, I've just given you kind of one point to connect. That's my point B there. I think Ruby will give you a couple of more pointers you can connect. But basically the information here is that the demand for your currency comes from the demand for your goods and services. If you're manufacturing all these nice, fast airplane, expensive cars that everybody wants and those S10, Samsung and iPhone, iPad, the value of your currency will be quite strong. If you're manufacturing sugar and potatoes and that's the only thing you're manufacturing, something that everybody can manufacture basically, okay, I don't think your value of a currency will be that strong. So that links back to the whole idea of research and development and innovation. Countries that are more innovative have products that everybody wants. The S10. S10 is out, isn't it? Yeah? Yeah. I don't have a clue what I'm talking about. I don't even have a phone. But I see all these ads, S10, S10. I told my wife, I said, oh, this is cheap, $10. She said, no, this is S10, not $10. It says S10. I said, oh, I saw it. Okay. So, any question? So countries that have strong currencies are a reflection of the innovation, a reflection of the fact that they're producing and exporting goods and services that the rest of the world desperately want. As soon as it comes out, they want it. They want to buy it. So in order to buy it and pay for it, there's that currency. The more they want it, the stronger your currency gets. Countries that don't manufacture and produce those high-quality products, innovative products, technologically advanced products, usually there's a correlation with those economies. They don't invest much into research and development. They don't have well-developed infrastructures for research and development, and that's reflected in the value of the currency. So if you look at the trajectory of countries such as Singapore, such as China, those countries have invested a lot in research and development and innovation. And as a result of that, after 30 years, those countries have moved from a base where the currencies were not worth much. Today, Chinese currency is very strong. Everybody wants to import from China, therefore you demand Chinese currency. China is attracting investment to the rate of, what is it now, $150 billion a year? So when you go to China to invest, you take your 150 billion every year. Can you invest in China? No, because in order to invest in China, you have to employ people, buy buildings, buy land, whatever. You need domestic Chinese currency. So you have to take your $150 billion, exchange it to get Chinese currency. That props up the value of the Chinese currency. Okay. So the demand for this currency is related to the demands for goods and services of a particular country. Does that make sense? I'll leave you with Ruby. Okay. She will give you a bit of the other bits and pieces in this. But a lot has to do with that framework that we talked about last time. You can apply it to demand and supply for currencies. Good, so I will go now. No need to cry and all that. I also have a few questions, so you can look at that. Okay, it's fairly simple stuff, but just any question at all before I go? No question? Yeah. So what message do you guys want to take from just give me one-liner. What is the main message? I'm putting my money in my pocket before I lose it. What is the main one-liner that you take from this? Try to? Oh, the framework? Okay. Another liner? What other liner?
The value of money is somehow dependent on the goods and services that we produce.
Okay. Another one? We're making progress. Another one. Yeah, I know you're dying to say something. Yeah. You see, you have to watch the body language. Where when we stand here, we watch body language. Okay. Okay, just one liner.
Money makes the world go round.
Is that all you could come up with?
I have no idea.
History and evolution of
One liner. History and evolution of money. Yeah, you have to kind of get that sorted out. The role of those institutions. I'm surprised you guys are not asking me a very important question. What is the role of cryptocurrencies in all this? So you should have asked me, he says, hey, your story sounds cool, but you're missing something here. Cryptocurrencies. There's plenty of them now. Bitcoin and all kinds of stuff. So look at the characteristics of money, the function of money. Okay? And ask yourself, do cryptocurrencies have the same characteristics and function? What do you guys think? What is one of the main characteristics of money? We mentioned some of that. Yeah, it has to be accepted. Legal tender. Is cryptocurrency a legal tender? No.
some countries have not till now accepted that crypto is a kind of a currency.
Yeah. In fact, some countries have banned cryptocurrencies. China is one of them. Okay? But in Australia, we are a free country, free trade, free this, free that. There's a guy in Melbourne sold a house for $1 million. He says, I'll take cryptocurrencies. He sold his house in Melbourne. And he says, I'll accept payment in Bitcoin. Okay? Is it a medium of exchange?
Sometimes accepted, sometimes not. It has a barrier of exchange. You can say.
So the question is it a medium of exchange? Yes?
Not globally.
No?
Not globally.
Not globally? So it's a limited medium of exchange? So we know it's a limited medium of exchange. We know that it's not a legal tender. And what else do we know? Is it a store of wealth, a store of value? That's another characteristic of money.
Yes, it is.
Is it a store of wealth? Like I talk about the banana. You go 2 weeks later, your banana is rotten. So that's not good currency. Okay, it's not a store of value. But what's in my pocket here is a store of value. Okay? It has to be stable? No, but is it a store of value? Cryptocurrency. Yeah? Okay?
Somehow people can hack.
Somehow
People can hack it.
people can hack
Hack the money.
the money. No, you can't, he says. He's not your friend, is he?
The wallet you can hack, but the money itself you can't replicate or something.
So it is like the system based. So anything about related to the software, people can hack it. It's not like the money was wrong.
Okay? So there's some disagreement here. So you have to kind of ask yourself these questions. We have money, we have cryptocurrency. Money is a legal tender. Central Bank Australia prints money. People accept it as a form of payment. Okay? Cryptocurrency, some people accept it, others don't, but it is not recognized by the government. Okay? If you have $10,000 in the bank today and the bank goes bankrupt tomorrow, you're covered, there's an insurance, you're fully covered, you get your money from the government. Okay? If you have $10,000 in Bitcoin, you lose it tomorrow, you cannot claim any loss, you're not covered. So there's all these issues that you have to consider in trying to understand what are cryptocurrencies, and will they replace the kind of money that we carry in our pocket one day? What do you guys think? Probably not. What do you guys think? Cryptocurrencies will replace the money that we have today? No? 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 So it looks like all of you agree except me. I said, you know why? Because 500 years ago, I also asked this guy, I said, you know, do you think one day a piece of paper will replace cigarette as money? They said, no, no, no. No, we will always have our cigarette. That was 500 years ago. But you never know. I believe as soon as the governments around the world start paying attention to how cryptocurrencies can add value and can restore stability in the global monetary system, I think you will start seeing some changes. This is a piece of paper anyway. So what's the difference between this and cryptocurrency? This is a piece of plastic. Okay? How about this other thing that I don't understand? It's called blockchain. Who can explain that to me? Blockchain. Have you heard blockchain? You guys haven't heard blockchain? You're missing out on millions of dollars. What are you doing here? Blockchain technology. No? Okay. So I think you're getting bored with me a little bit. I will leave on this note. So anyway, read chapter 10 and chapter 11, and I will see you soon again. Okay, thanks, Ruby.
Thank you.
Is that okay? I'll leave here?
Yep, thank you, Professor, for your time this morning. Thank you.
Okay, guys.
Thank you, Doran.
Okay.
Okay, guys, it's wonderful to have Professor joining us this morning. Now, Professor Chatty has prepared almost like a summary, a few dot points to get you to think about the topic on international monetary system and also foreign exchange. Now, he summarized the key essence of what I was going to deliver to you this morning on the topic of international monetary system and provided you with a bit of a discussion and overview in terms of the history and why we needed an international monetary system. Professor also had gone further and talked a bit about foreign exchange. Now he's listed a few important points on these 3 slides. So he basically summarized the 2 topics for us within these 3 slides. Now, note the 3 main types of foreign exchange risk. Every year, almost every year, there's a short answer question that will pop up. So there's a reason why the professor summarized some of these dot points. And as he mentioned before, what you really need to do is to take it further, because in class we're limited by the time in terms of how much we can deliver. Now, the professor's view is very simple. It's postgraduate. It is a master's level program. We could sit here, I could go through the PowerPoints and do death by PowerPoint, but you're not going to really be engaged with us. So what Professor wanted to do is to have a bit of talk with you, get you to think about some of these concepts. He had come to visit us last week as well. Some of you were here, others weren't. And he did a diagrammatic representation on the board. Some of you have seen that, talked about demand and supply. And he had also left you with 2 readings, which I'll show you. I have pulled it up for you. Okay, there's the first reading, the partial equilibrium setting for trade policy analysis, which you should have a look. And inside there's all the graphs that he had actually drawn, talking about demand and supply and market equilibrium. There's a second reading, tariffs and quotas. So similar to the graph there, the professor had drawn up on the whiteboard, so you may wish to refer to this for more information. Now, each week the professor put up a message for you. I hope you've been reading the messages, because as he said, you should read them. There's some important aspects, and if you read them carefully, you kind of can see the essence and the focus of the topic. and you never know. There's some hints there. So I would actually say read it carefully in terms of what you will take away. It's not just a bit of introduction about the topic, but it's also what is currently in trend and what's the emerging trends and some of the topical issues. So as you can see, we have a set of slides weekly uploaded already on Cloud Deacon, and with this you'll be able to see there's a lot of content. So I could just go through them with you, slide after slide, which is what previous unit chair would want me to do, and I do that diligently every week, and fit in also a case study for discussion. But what this unit chair, Professor Chatty, want to do is for you to have a bit more time to think and reflect, not necessarily for me to cover every single point. However, for those of you who wish to have structure, I just want to show you, because the professor had come in to talk to us last week, we could not get sufficient time to go through the whole set of lecture notes. So I have pre-prepared a set of recordings, which I always upload for the summer semester and update each trimester. But given we have a face-to-face class, they did not want me to do a pre-recording. So this was from previous trimester. So I've uploaded a set of recording for last week's lecture because we couldn't deliver the whole lot. So there's part 1 on national trade and investment policies, cooperation between nations. You can listen to that for those of you who wish to follow the lecture notes carefully. So I will go from lecture slide 1 all the way through to the last part of the part 1 lecture. Then there's part 2, deliberately split into 2 parts so that you can listen to it and review it more carefully, so you don't have to spend 2 hours. So each one is about 45, 50 minutes, 50-something minutes. So the second part is on regional economic integration. So you may wish to listen to that, review that for those of you who want structure, and you just need to open up your lecture notes for week 5 and follow that. Same goes for week 6. This week I've also pre-recorded. I've got pre-recording, which I will release to you later because I know the professor is visiting today, and therefore we will not get time to go through the whole lecture, whole set of lecture notes. There's a lot of content in this unit. The professor also agreed it could potentially be 2 units. We could look at the trade environment, and we can then look at the other more specifics, the instruments the government use, the trade system, the international monetary system, marketing, all those specific topics could be part 2. So again, I've got 2 recordings which I will release after lecture, and you can listen to them should we not get through the whole set of lecture notes. Now, you've been sitting down for a long time, so I want to give you a break. Let us take about 10 minutes or so break, have a stretch break, get some fresh air. We'll come back and we'll continue. Would that be all right? Great, thank you. Yes, it was, yeah, yes.
So we should just meet outside.
You should just continue with only the two of you, and then you focus on your country, he focus on his country, and then okay, we'll make a start again. Okay. Now, as you all know, we have a program that we have to follow, and I'm guided by, of course, what the unit chair would like me to do, but we do have a set program. And if you look at our unit guide, we're sitting on week 6, so we're past the halfway mark. So if you were here last week, I would have said to you, hey guys, we're the halfway mark, which means from this point onwards, it's go, go, go. You have to finish off assignments. Am I right? Lots and lots of assignments all due around this time. Typically at Deakin University around week 3, there may be a mini piece of assignment, something really small like a proposal. 5, 7, 9, typical kind of pattern, progressive assessment. Then week 11, and all of a sudden you finish the program and you say, what? And am I ready for the exam? No, I'm not. So be careful about just doing assignments all the time. You have to keep up with your reading. Now, in the past, I would go from A to Z, as Doran had pointed out this morning, because the slides are very content focused, and if I go through the slides, you kind of cover the course for the weekly topics. But this trimester, the professor wanted you to do more of your readings and allow more time in class for interactions and discussions, which means I have to remind you to keep on top of the reading. Guided by this, the weekly planner. So as you can see, this week is International Monetary System plus Foreign Exchange. If you don't keep up with your reading, then very quickly, as soon as you finish the assignment, you go, oh, I've got a whole 10 weeks of material to study for. And there's a lot of reading to be done, usually 2 chapters per topic. So you need to do revision along the way. You need to really keep on top of your reading, even if you can't read the whole chapter. Do you read the whole chapter? Brent? You do? Okay, if you read the whole chapter. So you either do really well or you don't designate time to do it. Linda, what about you? What's your approach? Okay, maybe she just skim reads some parts. Is it David? Is it? Yes. So how do you approach it? Okay. Anyone else? Do you come to class having pre-read something? Or you just say, well, let them teach me? Yep. Okay, so she'll read a little bit maybe before class and then come, no? Okay, go to class, go away and then reread the chapter, look at the notes and then take notes around the learning objectives. Now we all have different approaches with learning. Whatever works for you, there's no one prescriptive way. But what I wanted to remind you is that don't just keep focusing on the assignments, because whilst the assignments are important, the due date's around the corner, where students lose out is they don't keep on top of the reading, they're not learning along the way, and then all of a sudden come week 10, week 11 final revision, they say, oh my goodness, I have to read all this. No, you can't. There's so much you can't digest in such a short space of time. So read along the way. One method I would recommend is before you come to class, have a quick look at the chapter, the beginning, okay, the introduction, the learning objectives of each chapter, which is also outlined in the lecture notes. Turn to the back and look at the summary. Usually there's like a concluding type of part of each chapter, have a look and see what the author wants you to take home, some of the take-home messages. Then download the lecture notes, do the same, have a quick look through, come to class where we get to go through the whole thing. Fantastic. You go away, then you review it again like what Linda said she would do. But don't just leave it because it will just catch up with you. As you can see, week by week, there's hardly any time. Okay, there's hardly any time. If you don't do it as you go, you'll fall behind. So draw a line in the sand. Okay, so this is week 6. If you haven't been doing any reading, catch up on the weekend. Each weekend, catch up on a little bit. But from this week onwards, don't fall behind. Don't just focus on assignments. Okay, I know you care about assignments, and I'm going to talk about assignments. But if you just focus on assignments, do you know what would happen? Is you don't learn the material, you don't understand the concepts, you can't apply it. In this unit, the exam is it's a hurdle. Do you know what hurdle means? A hurdle requirement. You have to get 50% to pass the unit. What happens if you don't pass the exam? Your marks get downgraded to a fail grade and you get 44%, something like that. So I don't want anyone to be in that situation. But quite often students do that. And it shocks me. Some of my best students, I think they're very intelligent students, but they are just not organized, don't time manage enough, and then they keep doing assignments, they do really well in the assignments, but they can't do the exams. Don't be in that situation. Follow this each week, even if you just read a little bit. And what makes it easier is that if you try to answer some of those questions, ideally, at the end of the chapters, they will provide you with a set of questions, but the professor has taken to give you a set of questions each week. Now, how many of you have been looking at the professor's questions? Every week, I think, without fail, every single week, he's posted a set of questions on Cloud Deacon for each weekly folder. Now, these questions, some of them, could potentially come out in the exam, couldn't they? They look like exam type of questions. Some are the long essay type of questions. Some are the short questions. Okay, I'm the one that have to go through the nitty-gritty, join the dots for you, help you to get there. Okay, Professor is very busy, so he'll give you the big picture, but you need to do the work. And I'm telling you, you need to answer exam questions. You need to get into that mindset and you need to practice because you know what, last week, for those of you who were here will remember, I got you to answer some questions. I assigned you into groups scientifically, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then all the ones, one table, all the 6, all the 5s and all that, and got you to attempt some of those questions. But what we found were some were very good in responding, providing a very comprehensive response. Other groups weren't so well in their coverage of the issues or the topics or the theory and so on. You think you understand some concepts, but when you try to answer a question and articulate it, wait a minute, what is globalization again? What drives globalization? Okay, is globalization a win-win for everyone? Who are the winners? Who are the losers? And you need to start thinking about it. So you read something, it's like passive learning, but what you need to do is to take that active learning approach. So I need to remind you that in this unit and many units, they have a hurdle requirement, which means you need to pass the exam. So don't neglect on your reading. And don't take that kind of confidence that I've read the chapter so I know. Do you? Do you really know? You need to test yourself because you can passively read the chapter and you're still not going to retain any information. So please, don't fall behind. Now, I'm doing this because I don't want to see any people fail at the end. I really don't. I want all of you to do well. So I'm also going to talk about assignments next. But before I talk about the assignments, I want to remind you about the reading. And I want to remind you early enough so you can do something about it. We are the halfway mark and a little bit beyond week 6. So you can still catch up. So don't fall behind anymore. Cover this week's topic. And then on the weekend, catch up. Don't look at your social media. Force yourself, lock your phone away, tablets, whatever. Focus on catching up on one chapter or one topic. Do it in a smart way, okay? And once you catch up, you'll feel much better. So that's what I want to remind you of, because don't forget, although you're covering the assignments, there's an exam at the end of week 11, and you can see week 11 is designed for a final revision and exam preparation. But you can come to the revision class and I can give you the revision, but it may not mean anything to you if you don't read all the topics along the way. Because in how much can I do in that 3 hours of revision? I have to also answer questions. I have to provide you some guidance. I have to do an overview for 10 weeks of material. There's not a lot of time that I have in that 3 hours that I can give you, all the key essence that you need to know. So you need to read along the way. So don't neglect on your reading. That's why I'm bringing this weekly planner up to show you, because every week you see there's a plan. I'm supposed to cover this topic and talk about writing reports or assignments and so on. Now, some of you have done really well with the proposal, but how much is the proposal worth? Only 5%, which doesn't mean very much. It's really just the approval. Yes, it's a good idea. Yes, you have justified your country's well, and please go ahead. So don't think that you've done well in the proposal, you necessarily do well in the country reports, which is what I'm going to do next, is to talk to you a little bit more about the country reports. Now, I've been getting emails. As I said, the professor wants to respond to your questions directly. And so each time when I reply you, I would copy the professor in. The country report requires you to think like an investor. Okay, if you are investing in a potential business venture and you pick the country, you want to know whether that country is worthy of your investment, whether the economy is in a good state, whether it's a politically stable environment, what kind of legal systems it has, what kind of trade kind of policies, is it supportive of foreign type of investors, and so on. What are some of the social cultural factors that you need to be aware of, such as dominant religion? It may impact on your type of business. So therefore, the proposal is approved. The ones that were asked to resubmit, some took it upon themselves and really improved. And so instead of a fail grade, they went up to let's say a high distinction, okay, or a distinction or a credit. The ones that they just say, okay, well, you know what, she asked me to resubmit, so I'll resubmit, I'll just do a little bit of improvement. They just get another barely pass grade. But they are doing themselves a disservice because they're not taking it seriously enough. The reason they did not pass the first time with the proposal is because they have not provided enough justification of their proposed product or service idea. Or they haven't even discussed or justified why their 3 countries of choice are good countries of choice. So we ask them to resubmit. Some take it very seriously and they really improve on their proposal. Others, just spend another few minutes and then submit it. Then they will struggle with the next part. So you need to take it seriously. This country report is an individual one. So Linda, if she spent more time in researching her country, diligently work on the report, she will get a higher grade compared to her group members that don't spend the time. Now remember, everyone can do well. It's an individual one. So if you pick Russia, research on Russia. If you pick China, research on China, India, and so on, US, Netherlands, whichever country of your choice, you picked it in the proposal, you propose that you will do that, you work on that. All right, individual assignment. So we want to see only on one country, not 3 countries. And it's an individual assignment. We don't want a group assignment. Do not submit a group assignment. It's an individual assignment. I don't know why, but people keep asking that. See, assignment type individual. You need to give a good coverage of the economic factors, the political factors, the legal issues, the trade and investment environment, the foreign exchange issues. Now today, with the professor's talk, you'll understand why we need to understand the whole foreign exchange, okay, whether a country has fixed type of system or a floating type of system. So what type of foreign exchange issues we need to consider, what has their currency been like, okay, and so on. Financial factors, do we have access to banking, for example? Can we borrow money as a foreign investor? Cultural factors, and what are some of the challenges of doing business in that country? Now, to make it a lot easier for you, and it cannot get any easier than this, is that we have provided you a helpful hints document. Which one is it? My eyesight. Here. Okay, helpful hints document. Now, how many of you have seen this document? Yep, anyone who have not even opened it? You have? Okay, good. You need to look at it because you know what? It's like a template. Isn't it like a template? You know when in primary school you make models and things, like a 3D model, or like you make an animal kind of figure, you use metal wires, you make the skeleton, then you put paper mache on top. It's like that, isn't it? This is almost like a template. It actually tells you what you should ideally cover in your assignment. All right, I have to be the one that covers the boring stuff, okay? Professor get to have fun, but I'll do the boring stuff. So if you don't do well in your assignment, you're going to complain. You're going to say, oh, I didn't do well in my assignment. Ruby didn't tell us this. Well, I'm telling you, I can only reach you if you're here or if you listen to my recording. But some people are not here and not listening to the recording. I can't help those people. So spread the words to your teammates. You need to cover it comprehensively. And quite often students ask, well, what do we need to cover in the report? Well, country factors. What country factors? So therefore, we prepare this document for you. It's a report. Therefore, it should have an executive summary. How long the executive summary should be? Should be ideally contained within 1 page. For busy executives, they just have a quick read of the executive summary. Is this report even worthy of my time? Should I even read beyond the summary? It has to be well written and only 1 page, succinct, okay? So it should have an executive summary that provide the findings of all the factors such as economics, political, legal, FDI, finance, and social, cultural factors in the assignment, summarize the report, and also provide recommendation in no more than 1 page. Some people like to write it first. You need to then revisit it because ideally you only write it when you complete the report, okay? It should have an introduction. The introduction should contain a bit of background information about your chosen product or service, the scope and the parameters of the report. What is this report about? What does it cover? Little bit, okay? The methodology used, what did you use to inform your research and analysis? What are some of the potential limitations of the report? Then we need to look at the more specific country factors. Now, if you look at this, you will see under the economic factors, we want to know a little bit about your chosen country's economic policy of the government. Why do we want to know that? Why is it important to know about a country's government and their policy around trade?
So it is difficult to trade there, or there are more restrictions there, so we cannot trade there?
Okay, so we can get to know, as the gentleman suggested, is there any restrictions to trade in that country? Are we going to receive some sort of support? Is the government going to help us or make it really difficult for us? What are their attitudes in terms of business? Why do we need to know about the GDP and GDP growth? Okay, what are some of the growth kind of potentials in that country? Why do we need to know about the economic factors? So it reflects the
Stability and purchasing power.
okay, stability, purchasing, so it reflects the stability, as the gentleman pointed out. That's probably more than the political, but I know what you mean by the stability of the economy and also the purchasing power of its citizens. So if you look carefully at the economic factors, you will see what we want you to cover is an indication of how good the economy of that country is. We can say we want to go and invest in Turkey with our product or our proposal of a service. But is Turkey a good choice for our product or service? Okay, and why? One of the things we need to look at is some of the economic indicators. Now, we've listed the economic policy of the government, the GDP growth, per capita income, CPI, inflation, unemployment, infrastructure. Should you decide any one of those are not applicable, tell us. We did not cover infrastructure because it is not relevant for our chosen topic or whatever it is, or that we're only covering this, okay, so that we know that you are not deliberately or you have not accidentally left out a big chunk of the economic indicators, but you chose to only cover these factors. Sorry, Linda?
I was just going to ask, so like when you talk about economic factors, obviously it's directly applicable to your country.
Yes.
But then do you need sort of like a wrap-up sentence at the end talking about how the economics apply to the product and service?
Very good. That's a high distinction type of report. Okay, so what Linda has asked is that, sure, these are the economic factors of your chosen country, but do you need a sentence to wrap up and link it back to your proposed product or service? Naturally, if you can do that, that's what differentiates you from a credit to a distinction or high distinction. Where appropriate, you should link back to your chosen product or service because it is relevant for your product or service. Now, that's the difference between the really high quality assignments versus the ones that cover just the factual and get a pass or credit. Okay. Now, note something in the brackets, trend. What do I mean by that?
Over the year, past 2 years, what is the trend?
Okay, last few years, so ideally 5 years. Okay, why? Why do I need trend data? Why can't you just give me data for 1 year, David? Okay, very good. So you can review the past and focus to the future. So like we live in the now, but we have to learn from our past and then to focus on the future and plan for the future. And a country will have its performance, economic performance. We need to know whether it's steadily growing, increase, or decreasing. What is the economy like? And therefore, single year data doesn't tell you much. You need to see over a few years and ideally the most recent 5 years. So the ones we put in bracket are the ones we suggest for you to provide trend data. Now, During the break, Linda asked me a question. Should you provide graphs, charts, tables, diagrams? Absolutely. It's a report. It's not essay. It's not an academic essay. It's an academic report, a business report. So the more the merrier, okay? But make sure you label figure 1, figure 2, and so on, and where possible, cite all the sources of information used. So if this graph came from the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade data, you need to put source underneath, DFAT, the year, and then link it back. We'll be able to go back to your reference list and see that particular reference, Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, 2019, so that we can see that your information is based on research and use credible sources. Now, you remember Ms. Sharon Tra came to present to you in class. She gave a very tailored presentation focused on NPM 735, unit needs. Her slides are on CloudDeacon, and I'll show you where to find it again. And I think it's week 2 or week 3 resources. You can refer to her slides again, and if she has provided you some tips on searching for credible sources that you don't even need to pay from Deakin University databases and library source. Okay? So there's no reason why you can't find credible sources. She even offered to help should you run into problems searching for information, but you have to do some work first. You can contact her by email. Political factors, we need to know what type of government is it in place. Is it like a democratic type of government? Is it a communist government? What is the type of government? And what sort of structure? How does it operate? What's its attitude towards trade and relations with other countries? What are some of the risks involved in dealing with this country? So some of the political risk associated with the country, and you may further break down to the more detailed risk factors if you wish. Level of corruption. We need to know the level of corruption of a country. So you may refer to sources of Transparency International to inform you. Give a little bit of comparison, say compared to say Australia, what's these potential countries perceived level of corruption. Legal system, very important. We need to understand what type of legal systems and how it works and the law that's relevant for doing business in that country. Some of the government rules and regulation for establishing foreign business, ownership of land and office, labor and employment law. Now, how detailed you cover this country factors report will impact on your next report. Because guess what? Your next assignment, assignment 2, is for you to come up with the most appropriate strategy and entry mode to take your chosen product, the Wonder Bottle, into your country of choice. Remember, each group has 3 members, some have 2, right? The 3 members each propose a country with a single idea of a product or service that you 3 have all agreed on. So let's say this is my product for my team, and we picked 3 countries. We then now work on individual country reports. In assignment 2, we come back into this group of 3, and jointly we pick 1 out of those 3 countries to work on. And the next assignment requires you to think of the strategy and the entry mode. But how do we know which strategy to embrace and which entry mode? Next week's topic is on your international strategies. There's 4 different strategies to choose from and entry modes, and I'll go into detail next week. However, if you do not cover this in detail, for example, the government's attitudes around whether you could own land or you could actually operate there, what are some local labor and employment laws, will influence which entry mode you actually take. You may decide not to set up wholly owned subsidiary there. You might decide that it is not worthwhile that I might just export into that country. Okay, so that's why how well you do in this country report assignment will influence your second assignment. When you get your results back, you may then compare and talk to each other and say, oh, well, guess what? Albert, you got a high distinction for your country report. Tell us, what did you do? Oh, well, I covered this, I covered that. Wow, it's a very comprehensive report. So what's your opinion of your country of choice? No, the economy is good, the political system is quite stable. Yeah, I would support going into this country. And then maybe someone else say, oh, yeah, I'm not too happy with my report. I actually did a last minute job, so I didn't cover it very well and it got a pass. But do you think it's still a good country to go into? Yeah, I think it's still a good country to go into. So then you three talk about it and pick one country out of the three. It may be Albert's because he got a high distinction, because he covered comprehensively, and we might just leverage off his success and then say, whoa, okay, now we're going to look at this country. Let's say, I don't know, Indonesia, okay? Then we say, okay, well, this product is going to go into Indonesia. Now we're going to think about the most appropriate strategy and entry mode to enter. And I'll talk a bit more about the second assignment. But you can see why is it so important to give a good comprehensive coverage of the country factors. It is quite loaded, this assignment. You may not get to cover every single one, and that is fine too. But it is better that you say you're only covering this and you're not covering that, rather than give the impression that you are omitting a huge chunk. Okay, some students do poorly because they totally miss out on sections. They cover the legal, they cover the economic, they don't cover the political. And they say, oh, all right, we'll pick and choose, we'll cover the finance, we're not going to talk about the culture. That's where they will fail the assignment. If you cover most of these parts, there's no reason why you would fail. Another one is they do not provide research. It's all their opinion. I think this country's economy is good. And then they go and plug a figure from some weird website, no credibility, that kind of thing. No referencing, or they have a reference list at the end, but no in-text citation. It looks really funny. You don't even know whether it's an academic piece. If you do it properly, there's no reason why you wouldn't do well in the assignment. But as I say, you should cover most of those parts. Now, the template is there to help you. Some of you may come up with other factors that are not listed there, and that may be fine too. And you may decide not to cover some parts because you might say that's not relevant, and that's good. Things that people tend to always ignore, repatriation or profit regulations. How can you ignore that? You want to know if you make money in that country, can you send the money back? You want to know that, wouldn't you? So what's the country's attitude around that? What are some of the rules and regulations? And trading partners, is there any special kind of trade agreements? You may say, well, you know what, our country of choice is perfect because between Australia and them, they have special trade agreements which is going to provide us certain level of advantage. It is very important, therefore, for you to do a good comprehensive coverage. Students quite often ignore forecasts. Don't ignore forecasts. If you don't provide forecasts, or if you don't write a good recommendation and conclusion at the end, that's the difference between a high distinction and maybe even a credit, because you simply have not wrapped up the whole thing. So you need to diligently think about your assignment. Now, some things can't change overnight. Culture, it will not change overnight, but will the economy change overnight? Yes. So we expect that you will be able to intelligently provide some sort of forecast. You can provide forecasts along the way for each sections, or at the end have a forecast section. Now, some of the forecasts that I'm reading are like, she's going to be so tired marking all these assignments. I bet she's not going to read the forecast. blah, 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 and they're just chucking something. It looks, woo. And, you know, on first look, oh, good assignment. Definitely almost a high distinction. And then when I'm reading the forecast, it's like, what is this? Don't think that we won't read it. We will read it. So you have to make sense. Recommendation and conclusions, quite often students like to lump it all into one section. It's entirely up to you, but let me warn you, it has to be well written, or you could split it up, okay? Your recommendations should be much more direct, more practical. Don't give this waffle, big picture, you know, we could do this, we could do that. Be more specific, okay? So, this template is there for a reason, to help you. It can act almost like a skeleton, okay? So for those of you who haven't seen it, I just want to point that out. You need to have a look at it. And of course, not to forget to review this document. Now, the professor has also summarized his take of all the assessment. He's posted this also on Cloud Deacon. Basically, a summary of what the assessments are. Now, for those of you who haven't seen it, I just want to bring it to your attention. Here you can see marking rubric. How many of you look at marking rubrics for your assignments? Very good, because it's like reverse engineering, isn't it? You look at what the markers are looking for and make sure that I have covered. So look at the marking rubric. You can see why the template is going to be very helpful. First part, the scope of the report, key findings, executive summary. How much is it worth? What is the mark? 10 marks, just for an executive summary. So in other words, if you don't write an executive summary, you lose 10 marks. Get the picture? Sorry?
It is not 10 out of 30, right?
No, I think it's 100. Yeah. So background, introduction. If you don't write the introduction, that's another 10 marks. What is a report where there's no introduction, there's no executive summary? Right? Or it can be a report. Now, this is the big one, 40 marks, the content. If you go through, you can see economic factors, political factors, legal, trade, FDI, foreign direct investment, foreign exchange, finance, and cultural sections. So you do the maths. If you, I will cover the economic factors, I won't do the politics, I will do the legal factors, I don't like trade and investment, I will look at finance and culture. So you're deducting marks in a way because you haven't given that proper coverage of the country factors. So please, if you want to be here, make sure you do yourself justice, do a good report. Up here, as in here. And as you can see, here, you need to do forecasts. Read the fine prints. Forecasts. Can you see forecasts? So if you don't provide forecasts, surely we have to deduct a bit of marks, isn't it? So, let me warn you, students are often ignore the forecast section altogether. At least provide some, okay? Then overall, we're going to award you 20 marks. Goodness. For research quality and analysis, here can you see a minimum of at least 10 industry reports or references? So if you provide us with only 3, it indicates to us you haven't done a thorough research. Yes, it can be journal articles, it can be industry reports, it can be government reports, it can be anything that can inform you. For example, a report from Australian Bureau of Statistics or Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, World Bank, International Monetary Fund, Transparency International is another one, okay, for corruption and bribery. So you can see that we are looking for evidence that you have done some research. So how we mark, we look at the beginning. This is human psychology. It's like, am I going to buy this book at a bookstore? For those of you who still read books, hard copies, which we cherish. I love books. Go to the bookstore, you pick up a book, you look at the front cover. Oh, very nice. What is it? Okay. You read the first part. You look at the back end, a bit. Some people go straight to the conclusion. It's good. All right, then I'll read it. Some people don't. I don't want to, ruin the surprise. But this is what marketers do. They look at the beginning and they look at the end. How many references? What are the type of references? Gee, these references are more than 20 years old. How is this going to be a quality piece of research? 20 years old. Oh, don't I have any more recent data? Okay, so use more recent resources if you can, and credible ones too. There should be no problem with searching for those information. So you want to aim for this last column. So here it says use an excellent quality and variety of sources, including journal articles, textbooks, business databases, professional reports, internet media, journal articles, and use to effectively support your argument. So we want to see rigor of research and analysis. And then you draw from your research and analysis in writing this report. Okay, so I hope that helps to clarify the expectation. So there will be no nasty surprises. And you can all do well if you put in the time. Okay, so that's the first assignment. Now the second assignment, which I'm only going to briefly touch on, because I'm going to leave it for next week, but tonight, if you log on to BB Collaborate session with me at 8 o'clock online for my off-campus online students, I will be talking about the next assignment because there's at least one submission from a student on the online group already submitted his report on Cloud Deacon, already finished, super organized, all right? So we'll be talking about the next assignment and also address any last minute questions for this country report assignment. So for those of you who wish to talk to me, you can log online this evening and work with me online by Cloud Deacon through our Blackboard BB Collaborate seminar from 8 to 9. But I will just mention this briefly. It is due in week 11, a group report, which means after you finish your country reports, you're going to come back into your groups of 3 or 2 and work together on this assignment. Now, you will see you need to consider the industry environment. You need to look at the market of your product or service. You need to think about the strengths and weaknesses, opportunities and threats. In other words, we want you to do a what analysis? A SWOT analysis, S-W-O-T. Tell me about SWOT analysis. What does it tell you? Strengths, weakness, opportunities, and threats. But what are the strength and weakness? It's internal. Opportunities and threats are external, all right? So you need to review your own capabilities in terms of your strengths and weaknesses. Okay, when you do the SWOT analysis, you have to know that it's the internal environment and the external opportunities and threats. And I'll talk a lot more about this in strategy. Then you need to, so you review the industry, the market, you know your own strengths and weaknesses. Then you need to think about the type of strategy to adopt going into that market. So coming back to the example, let's say we're going with Albert's country report, hypothetically Indonesia or something, right? Let's say if it's a country of choice. So now we need to do the report, the next report, which is looking at the most appropriate strategy to enter that market with your chosen product, the magic bottle, okay? So to go into that market, which strategy would you use? Next week, I will talk to you about the 4 main strategies that international firms would adopt. And then to justify why you would recommend this strategy. You then need to talk about the entry mode. Will we use exporting? Will we use licensing? Will we use franchising? Or what is it? Will we set up greenfield operation there? So you need to then think about the strategy and the entry mode, and with that you need to refer to some of the theory, okay, Dunning's eclectic theory. You then need to choose the organizational design and control. So for those of you who know strategy, you know you can have the best strategy in the world. You've studied strategy? Okay. What do you need to do once you come up with a big strategy? I also teach strategy. So you come up with a big strategy for the organization. So what do we do next? Sorry? Implement it, but before we implement it, how do we implement it?
First we check the view of it.
The view of it, okay, all right. The view of this strategy. All right, so let's say people agree that this is the strategy. We want to become the new market leader of manufacturers for these type of products, okay? So that is the view. We agree we want to become the new market leader. So what do we do next? Do we have the capacity? Do we have the capacity, our manufacturing arm? Do we have the technology, the know-how? What about our marketing team? What about our finance? What about our HR people? Do we have the necessary people? So what you do is you have the strategy, but then you need to configure your internal operation to support the strategy. Your strategy can be really good, but if you don't have the right people, it will fail, right? So therefore, we want to see that you've thought about your strategy and entry mode, and then now your organizational design. So we expect that you will provide us an organizational chart. Okay, now you've thought about it. Okay, we're going to increase an export division. Well, therefore your organizational chart should reflect that, an export division. All right, we're going to increase by setting up a new subsidiary in Indonesia. Then your organizational chart should show that. What are some of the control measures you put in place? And we'll talk a bit more further down the track about that on the topic on HR. What about international marketing strategies that you might adopt? Any marketers in the audience? Marketers? Yes? What's important about marketing? What do we need to know? Okay, target market group, all right. But first of all, we need to know what type of product. Market research, okay. So yes, whether we are actually making something that our consumers want, what type of product or service we are providing, depending on our consumers. If there's a need for it, right? Marketers will help you believe and think, I need the diamond ring to survive. You know, I need that watch. I need this car. I need this handbag, right? They can market anything. They will be able to blur the boundaries between needs and wants. There's a difference. What do we need? We just need water, food, sleep, air, shelter. But they will have you pay, I don't know what, $10,000 for a handbag? And you happily pay it because limited edition, right? So, marketing. So we need to know about the marketing environment. We need to know about your product and service. Marketing mix. I was waiting for that. Product, price, promotion. How many P's do we have now currently? Traditional 4 P's, the standard marketing mix, and now some textbooks will go to 7 P's. Okay, so the traditional 4 P's are product or service, price, place stands for distribution, and promotion. So we expect that you will be able to talk a bit about marketing here. Human resource management options. All right. Do we take more ethnocentric, inward kind of focus, polycentric? What type of HR kind of strategy do we adopt? And we'll talk a bit more in the HR topic, but would you recruit local employees or would you recruit third country nationals just based on their merit, the best person for the job? So if Linda wants to go to Indonesia, we could send Linda, or we could recruit someone from Hong Kong, right? So will you send someone from headquarters to head up some of the management positions in your chosen country, or would you employ locally? So these are the things we want to think about. Because no matter how good your strategy is, you need to ensure you configure your internal operation, whether it's HR, whether it's marketing, to support your overall strategy, right? The captain just say, we're heading in that direction. The ship is going to sail in that direction. Everyone frantically doing things, right? The captain don't do anything. The captain just stand there and look really handsome and walk around on the deck, give the orders. You do it, man, But everyone's like, oh, do this, do that. So we have to configure our internal operation to support the overall strategy of choice and entry mode. Then, of course, at the end of the report, we want to see a recommendation. What do you recommend after doing all this? Would you recommend going to this country? Or after doing all this, you say, I don't know, it's not going to work. And if you're going to that country, when do you go in? Early entry, late entry? Do you enter really big? Or do you enter small and then grow? So first mover advantage, first to market, or first mover disadvantage. So these are all the things we need to think about and linking back to the theory that you're studying along the way. Then recommendation, how the firm might deal with the above issues for the next 5 years or so. So therefore, your report should be one that's well researched, supported with good information, well analyzed, factual, and then at the end, you give your recommendation. And not to forget the forecast as well. So what makes a good assignment? First, quality research. Because you put rubbish in, rubbish come out. Right? If you base on poor data, poor information to begin with, it is going to be really hard to write a good report. So use good credible sources. You have good quality sources of information. For example, there's a few listed here. You could use databases like ProQuest. You could look at EIU reports, Data Monitor, academic journals for the theory, business, government reports, industry reports for the practical aspects, okay? And how well you use these resources to support your arguments. At the same time, is your report a practical and realistic one? Not just purely theory, you can actually apply. So, limited word count, work smart. If you can present it in table format rather than spend a whole page writing about it, present it in table format, then you just do your 1 or 2 sentences underneath. Okay? Sure, you can also include an appendix, but always make sure you refer to it in the report, because if you don't refer to it, don't expect the marker just will read your appendix. So what am I supposed to take out of this appendix at the back? What does this group want us to draw from their appendix? So don't just chuck everything into the appendices, all right? Do think about which ones go to the back, which ones to include in the body of the report. Okay, so these are the things that I need to cover. I wish I can just have fun with you, but I can't, because you will need to deliver this, and if no one tells you, then you'll be in for a surprise. So that's the assignment front. Any questions before I move on? Any questions on the assignment? Yes.
The country report, can we also provide that, like, if we are talking about economical factors, so like we can first talk about the, like, that also can be in the tabular form? Like, first we can talk about corruption, then, like, so that we cover all the factors.
So your question is the economic factors, could you put it in a table format and then talk about it in the report?
Like, first, like, I have the GDP of the country and then tell what the GDP is and what will be growth perspective and what was it earlier.
Yes.
And then I have talked about like the corruption, what and all that. So like, I can do it in a tabular form also.
Yep, yes, definitely. Now, you may record in one of the earlier weeks, and I can't remember whether it was week 2 or week 3. It probably is week 3. I did provide with some country fact sheets. Okay, here. Let me just bring that up. Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. And for those of you who came into class, I had some hard copies which I shared with students. So for example, if you look at the recent economic indicators, right, this is in a table format. The last few years, you can see very clearly in terms of the trend. This is what I mean, is that if you provide me only data of 1 year, it doesn't say very much. I can't compare. But if you can show me a few years, then I can see the trend. Is it upward? Is it going down? Right? And you can actually present them in graphs like this in terms of GDP growth, merchandise exports and so on. So this is just one example. Who are their major trading partners? You see, there's a lot of good sources like Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. Now, Sharon also talked about some of the really good sources, so have a look at her slides if you haven't got around to it, or you missed that week's class, or you've forgotten about it. And, you know, Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade produce country fact sheets, you know, India, China, it's all there. You can just look up alphabetically A to Z. There's all this country information. And I can't remember which one is it in particular, but Sharon had mentioned a few that were really helpful in class. So please do have a look at those information. So good information go in, good information come out. All right? So as you can see, we're packed full of things to do. So I just wanted to address any last minute questions because you now have a little bit of time to make your country report better. It's not due this Friday, it's due next Thursday. So you've got a little bit of time. Put in a bit of effort. Get this done. Then it will help you with your next assignment because if you have good quality country report, it will make your next assignment much easier to do. Not only that, it's a good learning experience for you. You will learn a lot more if you put in the effort. Then, as soon as you're done, don't just wait for feedback. Start thinking about your country entry strategy. Between the 3 of you, you should already be able to decide which country out of the 3. You don't need to wait for the feedback or the grades of the outcome of your country report assignment to determine which country out of the 3 that you're going to do the next assignment on. You should already be able to decide, okay? So I don't want to go into too much detail for the next assignment because some are still working on the country report, except to mention that for those people who are on track, almost finishing the first assignment country report, you can then start thinking about the next assignment. So naturally, I look forward to seeing you in online this evening if you want to talk to me about assignment 2. So no questions for assignment? All right, I'll stop talking about assignment and then bring your attention to this week's material. Now this week, we have a lot of things planned, and as always, the professor has put up a set of questions from last week, which you see if we didn't have the talk from the professor, but it was a very good orientation into the topic, so it was welcomed. We liked that. But if not, I would have gone through a few of the questions with you in class, like last week. So what I encourage you to do is to review these questions after you've gone through the topic, last week's topic, and see if you can answer those questions. All right? I would have covered them in class, but I don't have time, so I can't. So 2 sections. You need to review the first one to do with government policy and international trade. The second one on the regional economic integration. And that's very, very much the essence behind why countries will form trade blocs like European Union, why they will come together, reflecting on the international trade theories that talk about countries should focus on what they are good at doing, competitive advantage, Adam Smith, comparative advantage, right, Ricardo? So we need to think about what we can do best and then trade with the rest of the world, because overall it's good for everyone. Consumption will go up, production will go up. But not only that, we are talking about some sort of trade agreements where you belong to this club, you can take advantage of some things, you're outside of the club, we're going to discriminate against you. So why? Why did they set up European Union, for example, right? What are some of the advantages? What is ASEAN? What are some of these other kind of trade agreements? So you need to review this. Now, the professor today has provided 3 summary slides. First one, International Monetary System. What is money? The history of International Monetary System, which if I have time, I will go through with you in class, and you will see the lecture notes. The Bretton Woods system of fixed exchange rate in 1944, and since World War II, the establishment of International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. And then what happened after that since 1973. And then we move on to the foreign exchange system, talk about some of the risk and what we need to watch out for in foreign exchange. Why do we need to understand what type of foreign exchange system different countries have? Because we're trading with them and we're trading potentially in their currency. So we need to understand how it works in that country. Okay. On one hand, we have this international monetary system that oversees everything. But on the other hand, every country have different kind of system. Some have floating, some have fixed exchange system. So we need to understand the subtleties and what are some of the implications for business and trade. We need to understand the risk involved, okay? And we need to understand how we overcome some of these risks. So therefore, the professor talked about transaction exposure, translation exposure, economic exposure, and how firms can minimize their foreign exchange exposure by buying forward, using swaps. So some of these strategies are useful to overcome some of these risks. So these questions you should try to answer after you study this topic. Now, to compensate for the fact that we don't have time to go through from A to Z, which was what I will do with you if I had the whole full 3 hours, is that I have already pre-recorded a lecture recording. Okay, one on international monetary system. So if you play it, you'll hear my voice.
Welcome to week 6, topic 6 of your international business study. Now, in this week's
you can see
institutions,
it's there,
such as the World Bank,
so it's
and the
pre-recorded for you.
International
Then there's the second part, which is a foreign exchange. So you can listen to it and have your lecture notes open and review it, all right? Okay, I'll check on that because I definitely did upload it. So please have a look at these 2 recordings. Okay, something's wrong. I will check and release for you. Sorry? Oh. Yeah, but the other one is also in draft, and I was able to play it. So it may be the uploading. There's something wrong with it. So never mind. I will check later, see how this one is in draft as well. That's before I release. It will show draft format, but this one is available. Sorry? Yep. So you haven't, no, you won't be able to see it. I will release it. But what I mean is that this one I was able to see it now as I'm showing you with my login, but the other one I couldn't. So there's something wrong with the uploading. I'll re-upload it. So please have a look at this week's lecture notes, and basically you need to understand the role of international monetary system. And you can see from the notes, I basically would take you through a bit of the history from the gold standard to Bretton Woods and the establishment of International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, and World Bank's role in loaning countries to reconstruct, to rebuild after the world wars. Two different types of loans, hard loan, soft loan, and the different trade talks, the Jamaican agreement, okay, the difference between fixed and floating, the role of IMF, the currency crisis, global financial crisis at the end, Australian dollar. Then we move on to the foreign exchange system, okay, and you can see here there's a link which I show you there. What is the recent data? So Australian dollar today or last night, or this morning, sorry, I looked at it again, sitting at 71 US cents. Now the figures, some of them are a bit old, so therefore I want you to read the most recent information. Also 79.4 Japanese yen, 4.78 Chinese yuan, 0.63 euro, or 1.05 New Zealand dollar. So you need to be aware of the most recent information. And this, we go into details about the mechanics of it. That's where Professor said Ruby will go through the mechanics of it. In my recording, I go through the mechanics of it. So for those of you who wish to listen to it, you can listen to it, or you can read up from your textbook as well. Okay, so, which I talked about all this in my recording, and that's why it really takes time. It's time consuming. Please do review the notes, at least have a look at it, and your chapter readings. Now I'll end with this slide. Please remember you now got given to Thursday the 18th, which means you have a bit more time to put in the quality research. Next week's topic is very, very important because it is the strategy. Every organization needs the grand strategy to work. And therefore, it's a very interesting topic, and it's a very important one as well. And you need to come to the class to listen, to be part of this, or listen to the recording and review the notes. But I look forward to receiving quality assignments. Please put in the effort, okay? Put in the effort, do the research, do the analysis, provide quality work, because then that will make your learning a lot more interesting as well. Any questions at this stage? Now, last week's lecture is also available in 2 sections. Recording I've uploaded already. This is something not this trimester that I prepared, but previous trimester for online delivery. So you may wish to refer to them as well. But the professor gave you the big picture, so now you need to go and join the dots. Okay, so good luck. I hope you do well with your assignment. And for those of you who want to talk to me again online this evening, 8 o'clock, 8 to 9. Okay, thank you for your attendance and participation today. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
data that you've shown about Australia and China.
Sorry again, what's your question?
You just showed some data about Australia and China. Which means lecture will we be able to find it?
Oh, okay. You mean like the Department of Foreign Affairs data? Yes, I think that was something that I show you in class. You simply go to DFAT, Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. I show it only in class. I did not put on Cloud Deacon because depending on which assignments, which country of choice,